These financial tips and resources are brought to you by USAA, a proud supporter of America's military, serving veterans and their families since 1922.
Debt affects thousands of Americans, and we know that debt affects military families too. What advice do you give to military families about navigating through debt and coming out on the other side?
Debt is one of those things that it really affects most of us in today's society. And if you've been in a position where you've had a lot of debt, you know how that feels. It can almost feel kind of helpless, right? So confessions of a financial planner here. It wasn't that long ago that I found myself in a position where I had about 70% of my income coming every month going out to debt payments. So a house I really couldn't afford, cars, had to have it, right? And that's kind of what our society teaches us today is it's a instant gratification. If we want it, go buy it, and that way you kind of keep up with what everyone else is doing as well. And the problem with that is when you get into a situation where you have that much debt, it makes it really difficult, if not impossible, to work towards other financial goals, right? So, saving for retirement is one thing, but even more short-term goals can be very difficult as well, like putting your kids through college or whatever the case may be. The key there is we'll call it the 3 A's to approach this. So the first A is just to assess what your situation is right now. So take a look at what debts do I currently have, what are my interest rates, what are my payments that are required each month, right? And then looking at that budget to say, okay, where do I have some wiggle room in here, if any at this point, to be able to pay a little bit extra towards that debt. Okay, and that's going to kind of lead into the second A, which is to attack it. So we're going to attack the debt with a vengeance, right? So we're going to put a plan together to figure out how can I pay down this debt as quickly, as efficiently as possible. And there's really 2 schools of thought there. One school of thought is, okay, I'm going to make the minimum payments required on all my debts but one, and on that one I'm going to pay extra. And that one debt I'm going to pay extra on is going to be the debt that has the highest interest rate. Right? And by paying on that highest interest rate first, once I get that debt paid off, I'm going to take that payment, roll it on to the next highest interest rate, and so forth until I get them all paid off. That approach will probably save you the most in time and money, okay? But sometimes it's not the funnest approach, especially if that highest interest rate is also one of the highest balances. It can take a while to see progress. So if you really want to kind of get that quick win and see some progress, the other option that you can take is to attack the debt with the smallest balance first. So I'm going to see, okay, which one of my debts has the smallest balance? I'm going to put extra towards that. Once it's paid off, then I'll roll that payment to the next smallest debt. So that's how we'll attack the debt. And then the third thing is avoid. It doesn't mean you have to avoid credit products forever, but until you get your debt situation under control, you want to avoid getting further into it. So put those credit cards to the side, stick them in a coffee can and freeze them if you have to, but avoid using the credit cards and racking up extra debt until you get your situation under control.
I think in the military community we can also use some of our lifestyle changes to help reset. So every time we PCS, if we move, we can reset our budget by deciding where we're going to live in a very proactive way to maybe free up some income to pay down some of the debt that we've incurred. We can take advantage of a deployment and potentially the additional income that's coming in during a deployment to help pay down some of that debt as well.
And cost of living, as we all know, varies throughout the country. Yes. Is that something that military families can use to their advantage when they're looking at their budget?
As Ingrid said, every time you PCS, the cost of living is going to change, your housing is going to change, your expenses are going to change. So that is going to necessitate a relook at your budget. And depending on what the situation is, you may be able to take advantage of it or you may not, depending on if you move to a lower cost area or maybe a higher cost of living area. But if you do move to that lower cost of living area, then it is definitely an opportunity to take advantage of that excess. As Michael said, avoid putting on extra debt, assess your situation and apply and help you get out of debt sooner. And once you get out of debt, then you'll get a sense of financial peace.
Remember, there are 2 sides to the budget. So we talk about a budget as being a tool to free up money, and oftentimes people focus on cut, which certainly isn't any fun. But on the other hand, hey, what opportunities are there for us to increase our income? So maybe it's the sharing economy. I'm going to start driving. I'm going to start delivering groceries. I'm going to get a part-time job. So you got to look at both ends of the budget in order to free up money to put towards that debt.